We're on Daf Ches, and we're counting down 4 lines from the top. And the principle here is that anything that wasn't prepared before Yontif, like, for example, Nolad, or something that he excluded from use on Yontif, is Muktzah, and it's also Betiltul. And the Mishnah says that with regard to the din of Muktzah, we have a question about something called Afer, which is the ashes that are left after a campfire. So you're allowed to burn a fire on Yontif. What's the status of the Afer? And the Mishnah says that although there's a machlokes about shchita in the cases of chaya of the oath, where you're obligated in kisi adam, however, Afer kira muchanhu, because with regard to kisi adam, amongst the various myriad of problems that you have facing, if you address kisi, you also have an issue of muktzah. And the Mishnah allows you, in a case of Afer, where you burnt a kira and you're left with Afer, you're allowed to use that Afer for purposes of kisi adam because it's muchan and it has various purposes, so it's not muktzah. But the language of the Mishnah is very strange. It says she Afer kira muchan. The extra letter she as a prefix seems to imply that it's going back to something before, which means that you're allowed to shecht and then do what's called chafira with a spade, a deker, and cover it. And then it says, Efer kira muchan. Well, what's going on? You started with an issue about shchita and chafira, and all of a sudden, the Mishnah throws in a sentence from nowhere called Efer kira muchan uman dekar shmei. Who mentioned Efer kira? We were talking about the question of shechting an animal, namely a bird or a chaya. And we said that with the evidence, if you already shechted it, Beis Hillel or Modeh, that Yachpor Bedeker V'Yachase, and then you tell me Efer Kira Mucha. We're not even discussing Efer Kira. We're discussing digging into the ground with a shovel, with a spade. We never touched on Efer Kira. Amar Rava. So Rava says that you have to chop up the Mishnah into 2 parts. One part is that b'diavad you shechted, and Beis Hillel Modeh that Yachpar B'deker Yechase. Then you start a new sentence that has nothing to do with the previous sentence. It's a new din that's being formulated by the Mishnah. Achikama ve'efer kira, and the vav. There's a whole discussion here in the Mefarshim whether he's adding a vav to our text. But even if he's not adding a vav, you read it as if there were a vav, and you interpret it as meaning that we're starting a new sentence. And when you have Afer, that's ashes that are left over from the furnace, muchanhu, it means he had in mind that he would use the Afer for a variety of different purposes. And therefore, let's say you shechted an oaf or a chaya, and you can cover its dam with Afer, and that would be a fulfillment of the mitzvah of kisi adam, then you have no problem with muktzah with regard to Afer. Now, when did he burn this fire and create these ashes? Did he do that on Yontif, or did he do it on Erev Yontif? Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Lo Shana, when does the Mishnah teach me that Afer Kira is not muktzah? It's called muchan, ela chehutzak me Erev Yontif. So already going into Yontif, he was burning these logs, and on Erev Yontif, the Afer, the ashes, were created. So that on Erev Yontif, the ashes were muchan and not muktzah. Well, husak b'Yontif, if he burnt this fire and these logs on Yontif, also. Why? Because he did not prepare the ashes, the Afer, on Erev Yontif. On Erev Yontif, he had eitzim, not Afer. And therefore, we cannot say that he had das to prepare yesterday Afer when the Afer didn't exist in the world. It's almost like Nolan. You can't prepare something that's not in this world. So to shecht a chayav v'of on Yontif and intend to do a kisi adam with Afer, if the Afer was created on Yontif when he burnt his kiro, when he lit his fire, that's muktzah. So we can't allow him to shech a chaya or an oaf in a way that he'll be obligated in the midst of kisi adam, but he'll have to violate muktzah in order to fulfill that mitzvah of kisi adam. Now Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, adds another point. He says, "V'im roy litzos bo Beitza mutter." However, let's say he burns his logs and his campfire on Yontif, and the Afer is still hot. The embers are still hot. You could put an egg on it, and you could fry an egg on these hot embers. So now we have a situation of hachana, because when he went into Yontif, on Erev Yontif, he had these eitzim that were prepared for hasaka, meaning for burning, and they were designated for sli or bishul. And right now, the wood that he used, although it's in a different state, but it's still designated and suitable for the exact purpose for which he designated on Erev Yontif. Right? He has wood and he cuts it up into logs. For what purpose? This is all on Erev Yontif, so that he can create a fire, hasaka, and then be mavashel, be sola on Yontif. So in its present state, as hot ashes, it is still suitable for tzli. Put your egg in, and it roasts your egg. Once it's already mukhan for tzli, you're allowed to use it for another purpose, because the idea is that when you use the embers for tzli, what you need to do is you need to cover over the egg. You're going to sort of poke around until you cover it over. So there's going to be tiltul of Afer. Says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav, once you have a heter to be metaltal the Afer, because you can use it for its original designated purpose, so it's not muktzah, then you could use it even in another way, and that is for kisi adam. Because you've already prepared the tiltul of these ashes as long as they're hot before Yontif, and now you can sort of piggyback off that hachana state and use the hot ashes to cover up the dam. Once the ashes cool off, then they're no longer included in the original hachana of Erev Yontif, and therefore you would not be allowed to be metaltal them and use them to be bechasa the dam. Tanya Nami Hachi. The Gemara quotes a brisa now to support Rav. Kisha Amru Efer Kira Muchanu, when the Mishnah states that the ashes are muchan, they're not muktzah, lo amru ela shehusak me'erev yontif. Aval husak b'yontif, also it's muktzah. But v'im roy litzos bo Beitza, if the embers, the ashes are still hot, mutter. Now the brisa continues with another din, also related to preparing for kisi adam. Hichnis afar. He grabs and gathers together a certain clump of afar. He gathers together dirt from the ground on Erev Yontif, and it's all gathered together in one place. Why did he gather together his afar? Leginaso ulechurvaso. He's going to use it for gardening purposes. And what he does is he spreads out the offer over the ground, and it sort of flattens the ground. And of course, he's not going to be involved in these kind of activities on Yontif itself. But now that he's already gathered the offer on Erev Yontif, then mutal l'chasasbo, he can now use it for kisi adam of a chayav v'of. And the Gemara is going to qualify this. That only applies when it's gathered together in one place. He hasn't yet spread it out, because we'll see later on that if he spreads it out over the ground, it becomes batel to the ground. So now that he prepared it before Yontif, it's daito l'shtamish bo l'chol tzracha. He had in mind that whatever use he could find for this offer, that's what he wants to do. And therefore, it's not muktzah. Now, I was a little bit confused here because we know that offer is muktzah. In fact, even Reb Shimon, who disagrees with muktzah, agrees, and he's moder that eitzim and offer are muktzah. And here I don't understand. He prepared it for gardening purpose, which is also on Yontif. So I don't know exactly what it means that you can make something mukhan when you designate it for purposes of something that you can't do on Yontif, because it's awesome. That's that piece of the puzzle I haven't figured out yet. Do you see, by the way, a glare? I see like a glare because the sun is coming in from here.
Yeah, it's not bad. There was a little bit. There was a little bit of a glare, but it's okay.
I even see it on my glasses, on my nose, on my mouth.
Yeah, I see that.
I see it behind me on the wall. I see like glares all over the place.
Yeah, but it's from my perspective. From here, it's not.
It's not so visible. I can turn it this way. Let's see what happens. Just 1 second. Let me see. My screen needs a cleaning.
Yeah.
But I wonder if this is better. I need a spray for this. It's not coming out. Let's see. Is this better or no? It's still.
I see it a little, but again, it's probably more distracting for you.
One last experiment, and then we'll. This side. Oh, this is better. I think it may be a little darker.
I don't see it that much.
Okay, let me just move my Gemara over here. Okay. We move on. The Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Machlis Adam Meloku Paso Afar, the Oseba Kol Sarka. A person is allowed on Erev Yontif to gather together an entire basket, a kupa of dirt. And we're going to see later on, it's a very limited amount of afar. And he didn't designate it for anything, for any specific purpose. And Osabo Kol Tsarko, as long as he did this activity of gathering together the afar in a kupa, that already is enough for hachana, and he can use a very small amount of this afar, and he can even pour it onto his ground, onto his karka. And the chiddush here is that normally on Yontif, you're not allowed to pour anything onto the karka because that's a malach of bonem, malachas binyan. But here he's using such a small, limited volume of afar that it's not bottled to the karka. What is binyan? Malachas bonem is when you take something and you attach it permanently to the karka. Here, it's not bottled to the karka. That's the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, is very similar to what we saw in the Beitza. He writes, "V'afshe b'Beitza kfar mevuah shem hichnis offer l'tzor kinoso l'tzor churvoso mutul shtamish b'offer seb b'yontiv in kein kolchkein kasher hichnis es malo kupas ha'offer lebeisel l'shtamish bo." So what is the chiddush here, Rabbi Yehuda, above and beyond the Beitza? Mishum shaBeitza osekes b'ofen shemachnis offer meruba b'yachad. He gathers together a larger volume of dirt, of soil. So therefore, for sure, it's not batel to the karka. Rabbi Yehuda osek b'davar shehichnis mi'at ofar. So Makom Lomar, I could have said without Rabbi Yehuda, she batel the karka. Mazech Kiddush Rabbi Yehuda afal pichein eno batel muta. So it's interesting. In which direction do we take it when there's more offer, when the volume is greater? Is that l'chumra or l'kula? It sounds like the more offer, the more you can be making. Why? Because then you could say it's not bottle, but a small amount is certainly bottle to the karka, and that's meleches pona. So the chiddush here of Rabbi Yehuda is that paradoxically, because it's so small of a volume, he's not mevatel to the karka. It doesn't really have any permanent, long-term improvement to the karka, and it's not bottle. And the Gemara now tries to embellish this statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Dorash marzutra mishmei de marzutra rabba. And he's explaining the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, Vahu, that which Rabbi Yehuda was matir to use the offer, if it's very small in volume, that he brought it into his house and Erev Yontif in that kupa, that's only yiched lo keren zavos. He designated that offer to a corner of his house. He did not spread it across the entire karka. But if he spreads it across his karka, across the middle of the floor of his house, his living room, or wherever it is, then he knows that people are going to stomp on it. That's called midras reglayim, and it becomes batel the karka, and that's awesome. And for sure, that would be a violation of muktzah. Now the Gemara raises the following kash on Rabbi Yehuda, who allows you to use on Yontif offer that you prepared on Erev Yontif Meisvei. The Torah tells us in Vayikra Yud Zayin that if a person shechts a chay or an oath, he's chayav in kisi adam. And now we have a Mishnah in Masechet Bikurim in the second chapter about something called a koi. Koi is a species of an animal that's safek chaya, safek oath. We just simply have no tradition as to whether or not a koi is, so I made a mistake here. I'm sorry, I said safek chaya, safek oath. Cross that out. What I meant to say is safek chaya, safek behema. Now, there's a chumrah behema and a chumrah in chaya. The chumrah in chaya is that you require kisei adam after the shchita. The chumrah behema is that the chelev of a behema is also, the chelev of a chaya is not. But we have to treat koi l'chumrah in both directions. We have to graft onto it the chumras of chaya and require kisei adam, and the chumras of behema as far as chelev is concerned. So in a sense, koi gets a bad rap. It gets the worst of both. Now the big question is, can I shecht a koi on yontif for the purpose of oneg simchas yontif? And the issue is going to be kisei adam, because whether I like it or not, I need kisei adam. And if the offer is not prepared, or I don't have Efer Kira, I won't be able to makayim the mitzvah of Kisei Adam. But keep in mind, Kisei Adam in the case of Koi is only a suffix. And therefore, the Mishnah Bikurin establishes that ain't shochin so beyond. Because on the one hand, we're going to require Kisei in the case of Shchitas Koi because maybe it's a Chayah. But on the other hand, it's Yontif, and he can't be Mechase the Dam and fulfill his Safek Mitzvahs Chaya. Now, part of the reason that we're not going to be lenient about encouraging him to do the Kisi Adam on the side that maybe it's a Chaya is because maybe it's a Behema. And if it's a Behema, you don't even have a mitzvah of Kisi Adam in the case of Behema. Then the Mishnah establishes the Shchato, if Shchato is the Eved, he shechted it already, the Koi, Ein Mechasen is dumb. We're always afraid it might be a subcategory, a species of Behema, and therefore there's no mitzvah of Kisi Adam. So we're not allowed to be metaltel, offer on Yontif for something that's not even a mitzvah of Kisi Adam because maybe the Koi is a Behema. So now the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda just finished teaching us that on Erev Yontif you can gather together a small amount of offer in a kupa, and it's muchad for everything. You can allowed to use it for any purpose. In Isa, Rabbi Yehuda is correct. L'chasye kid Rabbi Yehuda. Why doesn't he just gather together on Erev Yontif, offer in a kupa, and then shech the koy on Yontif, and be mechase the dam on the tzad tzachaya with the afar mechunas, which is not muktzah. We have a simple solution to a complicated problem. So the Gemara right away throws the ball back into the court of the Maksh, and he says, "Utamech, forget about Rabbi Yehuda. You should be asking another question, and that is the Mishnah itself." Says that it's awesome to be mechasa the dam of a koy on Yontif. But why is that so? L'chasia be efer kira. Okay, you don't accept Rabbi Yehuda's kula about lechanes es ha'ofa. But what about efer kira? The Mishnah is outspoken about the fact that efer kira is muchan. Or bedekel deker no tzmibonyo. Meaning, this is a sugya earlier, that if you take a shovel on Erev Yontif and you dig into the ground, so you don't have to do a chafira, which is a told of Meleches Charisha on Yontif, because you already Erev Yontif, you dug the shovel into the ground, then you could be mechasa the dam. And it's mutter to be mechasa the dam b'Yontif in that case. So why are you asking a kasha of Yehuda? Ask your kasha on everything that we know. There are so many different options for circumventing the problem that might arise in Kisi Adam. Why did the Mishnah tell us that you can't get involved in a shechita that generates Kisi Adam? Why not solve all your problems? You're going to tell me that Koi is a Safek Behema, and therefore I can't be Mechased Adam because I might be violating a malacha without a mitzvah. But there's so many ways of dodging that easy. Ella, the simple answer is that the Mishnah is addressing a case of someone who has no Efer Kira, he has no Ofar, which is a Deker notes, Mibod Yom. And likewise, he doesn't have a Kupa basket worth of Ofar that he prepared before. Hachanami, Leslie, he also doesn't have Ofar. So Gemara asks, if you're telling me that the reason why Kisi Adam of a Koi on Yontif is simply because he has no Ofar Muchan, he has no Efer Kira, he doesn't have a Deker nose, is my era. Why did the Tana bother addressing the case of Dam Koi, which is a Safek Chai, a Safek Behema, and therefore you can't be Machasa the Dam on Yontif? Afilu Vadai, let's take an oath or a Chaya. Like Chaya is venison, like you shech the deer. And Nami, we have the same problem. Lo yechasib ofen zebiyontiv. He cannot fulfill his mitzvah of Kisi Adam. He doesn't have any offer, afer. Nothing was prepared. And we paskin like Rabbi Hillel in our first Mishnah Masechet Beitza that even with the Evet, if he shechted it, if he doesn't have a deker notes mibodo, he's not allowed to be mechas dam. So what does the Tana gain by mentioning the halach of a koi? It doesn't seem to be even an iota different than if he was not in a safek situation of koi, meaning safek chayach, but even if it was a varei chaya or varei oath. the same situation would apply. The same thing would apply. Does he have something that's mukhan for kisei, or he doesn't? If he doesn't have something that's mukhan, then Beis Hillel paskins that you're not allowed to shech the animal, because then you'll be mavatal the mitzvah of kisei adam, because you cannot fulfill the mitzvah of kisei adam. You have a muktzah problem. So now the Gemara establishes that there's a chidush in kol. That's what the Beitza wants to present. Lomi boy, vada. In the case of a chayr and oath, dulo yishcha, for sure you cannot shech. Why? Because by shechting it, you're going to put yourself in a situation where if you don't have afar muchan, then you're going to be mavatel a mitzvah d'oraisa of kisei adam. Well, Suffolk, I might think in a case of Suffolk, Ema, perhaps we should allow him to shech the kai, even though he won't be mechased the dam, and I'll put my my chips, when in gambling, we're going to gamble in favor of the fact that maybe a kai is a behema, and he doesn't even need kisei adam. Ema, I would have thought nahavamina mishum simchas yantiv. We're going to encourage him to shech the kai. Kai is excellent. Have you ever tasted a kai?
No.
I don't even know what it looks like. But anyway, it's a real simchas yantiv to shech the kai and eat its meat. Ella, what? You're going to be mavatal the mitzvah of kisa because you don't have offer muchan. Is lo lechase, and let's bank on the possibility that the kai is really a behema. And there's no mitzvah of kisei adam, so I'm not being mavatal a mitzvah. Kamash malon, and that's exactly what the Tana wants to tell me, that even in the case of kai, we don't check it on yantiv, unless he has offer muchan lechasos boas damo, because even that push for simchas yantiv is not enough to override a mitzvah, which is a suffix mitzvah of kisei adam.